Imagine walking into your house, only to find your wife standing there with another Manand, your son looking at you, confused and hurt. This isn't just about cheating. It's about the devastating betrayal that can destroy everything you've built. But here's the shocking twist. I fought back, not just for my family, but for my dignity and my son's future. What happens next will leave you speechless. If you've ever been betrayed or feel like everything is falling apart, this story will hit you hard. Don't forget to like, comment below, and subscribe to join me on this journey. Remember, betrayal doesn't break you, it's what you do next that defines you. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hands still on the doorknob, staring at the woman who had once been my everything. Sophia, my wife, was standing there in the driveway, her figure dressed in tight jeans she hadn't worn in months. There was something off about her, something unnatural in her smile. It wasn't the smile I had come to know, the warm one that made me feel safe. No, this smile was cold, calculated, like she was hiding something, like she knew something I didn't. Behind her, in stark contrast to the peaceful suburban landscape, was a shiny new Escalade parked in our driveway, its black paint glistening in the late afternoon sun. And standing next to it was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, tan, and with a confident air about him, he looked like he belonged in a world that wasn't mine. His arm was casually draped around two kids' little boys, no older than 8 or 9, with expressions that seemed far too serious for their age. Then, behind him, I saw Noah, my son, standing in the doorway of the living room. His eyes were wide with confusion, his small hands gripping the frame of the door like it was the only thing holding him up. He wasn't saying anything, but I could see the unease in his eyes. The kind of unease that comes when a child knows something is terribly wrong, but doesn't understand exactly what. Sophia didn't wait for me to say a word. She tossed her long blonde hair over her shoulder, an almost practiced motion, and then spoke, her tone as if she were introducing old friends. "Mark, meet Jason and his boys. They'll be staying with us for a while. I think it's time we stop pretending." My chest tightened. Pretending? Pretending what? I looked at her, at him, at the boys. Nothing made sense. My mind raced as I tried to piece together what was happening. My throat was dry, my mind screaming for answers, but all I could manage was a hollow, broken laugh. It wasn't a laugh of amusement or joy. It was the kind of laugh you make when everything you've built is falling apart, and you realize there's nothing you can do to stop it. What exactly are we pretending? I managed to ask, my voice sounding foreign, even to me. Sophia didn't flinch. She walked past me like I wasn't even there, as if I were just a shadow in the hallway. Jason followed her, the two boys in tow, dragging their suitcases behind them as if they had lived here for years. They didn't even bother to look at me. It was as if they were already part of the family. Sophia didn't stop. She went straight for the couch, tossing her purse onto it casually as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "We've been done for a long time, Mark," she said without looking back. "You were just too blind to admit it." I stood there, motionless, the weight of her words sinking in slowly. A part of me wanted to argue, to scream, to demand an explanation. But another part of me, perhaps the smarter part, knew it was too late for words. The damage was already done. Noah, still standing in the doorway, finally found his voice. His small hand trembled as he gripped my arm, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, why is he here?" Sophia glanced over her shoulder, her eyes flashing with that same smugness. "Because he's the one keeping me warm now," she said, her words cutting through the air like a knife. That sentence didn't just hurt, detonated something inside me, something I hadn't even realized was fragile. The realization hit me like a freight train. I should have seen it coming, the late nights, the sudden obsession with the gym, the new underwear tag still on that she never wore for me, the way she'd smile at her phone, a little too smug, as if she were hiding something. But I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe we were just going through a rough patch. If I kept being the stable one, the provider, the protector, maybe things would go back to normal. But the truth was right in front of me now. She didn't need me anymore. And it was Jason who was taking my place. Sophia walked into the kitchen, her steps light, almost careless. Jason's boys are nice. Maybe they'll help Noah be less soft, she added with a fake grin. That was when something inside me snapped. The betrayal was no longer just a theory, it was a living, breathing monster in the room with us. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't ignore it. But before I could speak, before I could even breathe, Noah stepped forward. My 12-year-old son whose eyes mirrored mine, but whose heart was stronger than I'd ever been, pointed at Sophia, his voice cutting through the silence. "You're not my mum anymore." But before I could speak, before I could even breathe, Noah stepped forward. My 12-year-old son whose eyes mirrored mine, but whose heart was stronger than I'd ever been, pointed at Sophia, his voice cutting through the silence. "You're not my mum anymore." Jason shifted uncomfortably. Sophia's face went pale, then red, and then twisted into something venomous. "You little brat," she spat. He wasn't done, neither was I. "He had every right," I said, stepping forward to stand beside my son. "Because while you were playing house with some cheap substitute, he was watching everything fall apart, wondering why his mother didn't love us anymore." Sophia glared at me like I was a bug under her heel. She didn't say anything, but I could see the anger bubbling under her skin. "You were boring, Mark. Predictable. I needed a man who made me feel something again. That was it. She had crossed the line." I looked at Jason, his smug expression was starting to crack. "Feel something?" I asked, my voice cold. "You mean this clown?" Jason finally stood up, his voice smooth, as if he'd rehearsed it 100 times. "Look, man, it's not personal. Sophia deserves to be happy." I almost laughed again, but my fists were clenched too tightly. "I hope she makes you as happy as she made me," I said, my voice dripping with cold. "Because eventually, she'll turn on you too. She always does. And when she does, I'll be there." Sophia rolled her eyes and walked toward the kitchen. "Whatever, you'll hear from my lawyer. I'm done talking." But she wasn't done. Not by a long shot, and neither was I. The days following Sophia's announcement felt like a slow-motion train wreck. I could hear the words she'd said echoing in my mind over and over again. "I think it's time we stop pretending." I hadn't realized until then how much I'd been pretending to. Pretending that everything was okay. Pretending that our family was still intact. But Sophia's words had shattered the illusion, and what I was left with was the harsh reality that she had already moved on. The tension in the house was palpable. Every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something, someone. It didn't take long before I realized that I wasn't going to get any answers from her directly. Sophia wasn't the type to have a conversation about anything that mattered. She had a way of dodging the truth, playing everything off with a smile or a laugh. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started to follow her, watching from the shadows, trying to piece together the fragments of what I had seen and heard. I knew it was dangerous. I knew I should confront her, ask her directly, but something inside me couldn't bring myself to do it. Part of me was scared of the truth, of the possibility that she had already found someone else, that I had become invisible to her. But another part of me knew I couldn't just sit back and wait for her to destroy everything without knowing why. Then came the discovery. It started with a simple finger text message left open on her phone when she left it on the kitchen counter. The name that flashed on the screen was Jason. My stomach twisted. I tried to ignore it, tried to pretend it didn't matter, but I couldn't. The more I looked, the more I found. Love notes, heartfelt texts, promises of a future together. The messages weren't just casual, they were deep, personal, intimate. They spoke of a closeness I hadn't felt from Sophia in months, if not longer. And it wasn't just texts. I found receipts for hotels I had never known about. Weekend trips she had taken when she had told me she was visiting her sister, but she hadn't been. She had been with Jason. I felt sick to my stomach. It was like all the small, inexplicable things I'd noticed before her late nights. Her sudden obsession with the gym, her aloofness suddenly clicked into place. It wasn't just a rough patch, as I had told myself. It was betrayal. She had been emotionally gone long before she physically left with Jason. But the worst part was Ethan. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't as young as he once was, and he understood far more than I thought. He'd started pulling away from Sophia in a way that was too painful to watch. It was in the way he refused to eat meals with her, the way he no longer sought comfort from her when he had nightmares, the way he started leaning on me more than he ever had before. One night, after another argument between Sophia and me, Ethan finally broke down. He came to me, tears in his eyes, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, why is she doing this? Why is she being so mean?" His words hit me harder than anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just about me anymore. Ethan was hurt. He was confused. And that made everything feel 1,000 times worse. I held him close, not knowing how to comfort him. I wanted to tell him everything, to make him understand, but how could I? I was just as lost as he was. Sophia's betrayal had torn apart the only stability he had known, and now we were both left trying to figure out how to survive in this wreckage. That night, I sat awake in the living room, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I knew I had to confront the truth. I couldn't keep living in denial, pretending that things would magically fix themselves. I needed answers, and more than that, I needed closure. Whatever that looked like, I had to face it. The next day, I decided I was done hiding. It was time to confront Sophia, time to face the woman I had loved for so long, and find out just how deep this betrayal really went. The days leading up to the confrontation felt like a storm brewing on the horizon, and I knew it was time to face it head on. I couldn't live in this limbo any longer. I had to know the truth, no matter how ugly or painful it might be. I had already seen enough, pieced together the fragments of Sophia's betrayal. But I needed to confront Jason and Sophia together. I wasn't prepared for what came next. Jason wasn't just some random guy who had stolen my wife from me. No, he was far more dangerous than that. Jason was a high-profile businessman in the financial sector, with ties to people whose names I only heard whispered in dark rooms. As I dug deeper, I realized that he wasn't just a guy having an affair with my wife. He was a man with power. A man who could destroy careers, manipulate people, and get away with things that the average person couldn't even dream of. I found out that Jason had connections, ties to money laundering schemes, and a network that extended far beyond what I could have imagined. My entire world felt like it was crumbling down around me. I had thought this was a simple marital betrayal, something personal between Sophia and me, but it was so much more than that. It was a web of lies, deceit, and dangerous people pulling strings in the background. I couldn't let Jason get away with this, not just because of what he had done to me, but because of what he was capable of. He wasn't just a threat to my family. He was a threat to everything I had worked for, my career, my future. If I let him keep this hold over my life, I would lose everything, and I wasn't going to let that happen. So, I did what I had to do. I called him out. I arranged a meeting, just the two of us. I knew it was risky, but I didn't care anymore. I was done playing the passive victim. It was time to take control. The meeting took place in one of those sleek, high-rise offices with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city skyline. Jason sat across from me, a smug smile on his face, as if he had all the power in the room. I could feel the tension between us, like static in the air. He leaned back in his chair, clearly confident, but I could see the edge in his eyes, the hint of annoyance that he had to deal with me. "I don't know why you're making this harder than it needs to be, David," Jason said, his voice smooth, almost rehearsed. "Sophia and I are happy. You should just move on." I leaned forward, my fists clenched on the table, trying to contain the rage bubbling up inside me. "You think it's that simple?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "You think you can just walk into my life, take my wife, and expect me to walk away quietly? You've underestimated me, Jason, and now you're going to regret it." His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something resembling fear. "You're making a mistake, David. You think you can fight me? I could ruin you. I could destroy your career, your reputation. Do you really want to go down this road?" I didn't flinch. I'd already lost too much to care about what he could do to me. "You're not going to get away with this," I said. "I've got more than enough to bring you down. I've been digging, Jason. I know about your business dealings, your dirty little secrets. If you think you can threaten me into backing down, you're wrong." He stood up, his face turning red with anger, but I wasn't backing down. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back now. "You don't know who you're dealing with," Jason hissed. "No," I said, standing up as well, "but I'm about to find out." At that moment, I knew this wasn't just about Sophia. It wasn't about the affair or the broken marriage. It was about something bigger. It was about my career, my family, and my life. Jason had pulled me into a game I didn't want to play, but now that I was in it, I was going to fight with everything I had. I wouldn't let him destroy me. I couldn't. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined, and I had no choice but to go all in. This was no longer just a battle for love, it was a battle for survival. As I left the meeting, the weight of what I had just walked into hit me, but I wasn't afraid. I had the truth on my side, and in the end, that was all that mattered. Jason could threaten my job, my life, but he couldn't take away the truth. And the truth was something that even someone like him couldn't destroy. The more I uncovered, the darker it got. At first, I thought the affair between Sophia and Jason was the extent of the betrayal. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized that what they had done went far beyond infidelity. It was a well-orchestrated plan, a conspiracy to take everything I had worked for: my career, my reputation, and my future. It all started with a series of documents I stumbled upon one late night while going through the files in the study. I wasn't looking for this, but I knew something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just an affair. Matthew, the man who had come into my life under the guise of a simple affair, wasn't just some random businessman. He was part of a much larger scheme, one that I had unknowingly been dragged into. The first clue came when I found an email chain between Sophia and Matthew. It was clear they had been planning something for months. At first, It seemed like a typical back and forth, but as I read on, the language changed. There were references to legal documents, asset transfers, and a mysterious deal that was supposed to go through. Something that involved a significant financial asset, one that I had no idea existed. As I dug deeper into their communications, I discovered something that made my stomach churn. Sophia and Matthew weren't just after me, they were after something far more valuable. It turned out that a large portion of my financial portfolio, something I had inherited from my late father, was set to be transferred without my knowledge. This asset, worth millions, was to be liquidated and moved into a new account that both Sophia and Matthew controlled. They had planned to drain it, leaving me with nothing. I felt my heart stop. How could I have been so blind? How long had they been planning this? Was everything I thought I had built just a game to them, something to be destroyed for a quick payoff? I knew I couldn't just sit back anymore. I couldn't rely on the law or hope that they would come clean. This was a battle for everything. I had to protect my family, but I also had to protect myself. I had to ensure that Sophia and Matthew didn't get away with this. They were dangerous, and their reach was far greater than I could have imagined. I began to play their game, but I wasn't playing it blindly. I needed leverage, something they didn't expect. I kept digging, and soon I found something that changed everything. Hidden account number that had been used to funnel money for months. The trail was messy, but it was there, and it was enough to start the counterattack. The next step was to gather the right people. I couldn't fight them alone. I contacted a trusted lawyer who specialized in financial crimes, and a private investigator who could track down the missing pieces of their operation. Together, we worked in the shadows, gathering evidence and making sure I was steps ahead of Sophia and Matthew. As the days passed, I could feel the tension building. The game had changed. It wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore, it was about saving everything that mattered to me. The fight wasn't just for my family's future, but for my life, my legacy. The stakes had never been higher. And every time I thought I was ready to confront them, something else came to light, something more twisted and sinister than I had imagined. It became clear that this wasn't just a battle for assets, it was a battle for control. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. This wasn't a fight I could afford to lose. The closer I got to the truth, the more I realized how much Ethan understood. At first, I thought he was just a victim in all of this, a child caught in the middle of a broken home. But as I dug deeper, it became clear that he wasn't just a passive bystander. Ethan had known all along. He had seen the signs before I had, felt the cold distance between Sophia and me long before I even suspected anything. It was Ethan who first noticed the late-night texts, the quiet conversations when Sophia thought no one was listening. What blew my mind, though, was that Ethan wasn't just aware, he had been helping me from the shadows. He had been collecting evidence for me, not because I had asked him to, but because he wanted to protect our family. I should have seen it before, the way he had started staying up late, pretending to be absorbed in his homework, but in reality, he had been gathering documents, screenshots, and text messages from Sophia's phone. One evening, just as I was about to lose hope, Ethan came to me. He looked nervous, but his eyes, those eyes that mirrored mine, were determined. "Dad, I think this will help." He handed me a folder, and when I opened it, I almost couldn't breathe. Inside were text messages, bank statements, and records of hotel bookings from Sophia and Jason's secret meetings. They had been planning everything. It was all there in black and white. I looked at Ethan, not knowing what to say. He had been my rock through all of this. The kid who was supposed to be confused, scared, had turned out to be stronger than I ever imagined. He had fought for us, even when I didn't know how. That night, I made a decision. This was no longer just about confronting Sophia or Jason. It wasn't even about protecting my career or reputation anymore. This was about protecting Ethan, about making sure that he would grow up in a world where he knew right from wrong, where he knew that loyalty, honor, and love were worth fighting for. The final showdown came in court. I had never imagined that things would come to this. I had hoped for a peaceful resolution, that maybe Sophia would come to her senses. But this wasn't a negotiation anymore. This was war. And Jason wasn't just a passive participant. He had become part of this toxic machine, an extension of everything that had threatened to tear my family apart. The courtroom was cold, the tension palpable. Sophia took the stand first, her expression one of practiced vulnerability. She cried, played the victim, and spoke about how she had been neglected in our marriage. It was the same tired story. But as she spoke, I felt the weight of the evidence. I had gathered proof that she had been lying, that everything she said was part of her plan to manipulate the court and the people around her. When it was my turn, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I simply told the truth about Sophia's affair, about the lies, and about the damage they had caused to Ethan. I spoke about the family I had tried so hard to protect, and about the son who deserved better than a mother who would rather lie than face her mistakes. When the judge rendered the verdict, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. Primary custody of Ethan was granted to me, with Sophia allowed supervised visitation. It wasn't the victory I had imagined, but it was a victory nonetheless. I knew the battle wasn't over. Sophia would never give up easily, and I couldn't trust her. But for now, I had one. And more importantly, Ethan had one. In the days that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. The tension that had hung over our house was gone. There were no more late-night arguments, no more secrets or lies. Just me and Ethan finding our way forward. But even though things felt quieter, I knew Sophia wouldn't give up. She wasn't finished with us yet. I still had to deal with the aftermath, with the threats that were sure to come, with the way she would try to manipulate the situation in her favor. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I had Ethan, I had my family, and no matter what Sophia or Jason tried to throw at me, I wouldn't let them destroy what mattered most. There would be more challenges ahead, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had faced the darkness of betrayal, and now I had the strength to fight for the future. The story of David's journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately redemption teaches us a profound lesson about the strength of resilience and loyalty. In the face of deception from the people he loved most, David didn't crumble, he fought. The truth was painful, but it was his weapon. Family, above all, became his guiding light. David's dedication to his son Ethan reminded us that no matter how deeply we are hurt, we can rise again, fueled by love and the desire to protect what matters most. The story also shows the power of integrity. Even when faced with manipulation and power struggles, David never resorted to the same tactics as those who tried to tear him down. Instead, he chose honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. In the end, the fight wasn't just for his family's well-being, it was for his own dignity and peace. The greatest takeaway: true strength lies in standing firm when everything else is falling apart. David's victory was not just in winning the court case, but in maintaining his moral compass and showing his son what it means to fight for what is right, no matter the cost.